Hi everyone. To continue with the umbilicus of the fetal pig, it is important, and I want to stress that because of the analogies that it has to the human circulation as well. So even though this graphic, which is in Pearson, has the correct color for the umbilical vein, which is red, bringing in oxygenated blood up to the heart right there. Even though it has the correct colors for the umbilical vein that goes to the heart in the fetus and the correct color for the umbilical artery, which is leading away from the fetus, it still does not have the right number of umbilical arteries. So my point being this, be very careful what you look at online because Google is full of incorrect drawings in regard to the umbilicus and the fetal pig, and this is going to come up on an exam close to you. So learn about these differences. I wanted to point that out to you because the colors are right here in Pearson, but the number of vessels is incorrect. You will go over things like this in your videos of the dissection. I wanted to bring this up because you should know from here if these anatomical landmark blocks are covered, you should be able to label where these anatomical structures are. All right, and the videos go over them very well, but you can expect to see these slides. Now, I do want to emphasize the cuts that are made for dissection and the order of the cuts because I want to emphasize to you the use of anatomical terminology to precisely explain what you were doing. So for the first cut that you will see in the dissection video, you will see a mid-sagittal planar cut that goes down the ventral side. Remember, the sagittal plane divides the animal into right and left sides. Well, that's what's happening here. The sagittal cut generally goes from the head down. In this case, the mid-sagittal plane cut is going from the head down, just not through the skull down. And then the second cut is around the umbilicus. Okay, there's the number 2 cut around the umbilicus. Third cut goes caudally toward the tail and down the legs. All right, caudally toward the tail. Fourth cut, down by the hooves. Fifth cut, medial to lateral at the, medial to lateral at the pharynx, which is the throat. Medial to lateral at the pharynx, the throat. Last cut at the pectoral, in the pectoral region, goes medial to lateral at the pectoral region, medial to lateral. You don't start distal and work proximal. You always start at midline with your cuts because that's the more stable area to work from, right? So I want you to get used to the midline as being the basic, the most stable part of the animal. That's where you cut from. All in the technique. For the digestive tract, you should know these words. Remember, form follows function. We always look at function first. The function of the digestive tract, know these words: to ingest food, to digest food, and absorb it and eliminate it. Ingestion, taking it in. Digestion, breaking it down. Absorption. And elimination is known as egestion. If this is ingestion, this is egestion, like an exit. That prefix E means out. So know those words. There you will see them again. And know that the form of the digestive system is just one continuous tube with 2 openings, an ingestible opening at the mouth, an egestible opening at the anus. So Form follows function. In terms of the oral cavity, I think that this could have been described better, so I want to describe it for you so you'll have it for your report sheet. In this area, you have the nasopharynx, the oropharynx, the epiglottis, the glottis, the larynx, which sounds a lot like the pharynx, and the trachea. So a lot of words that sound the same, I want to divide them out for you so that when you watch the video, you can watch the video with a little bit more context. The pharynx is known as the throat, and there can be a prefix with that. The nasopharynx is the oral cavity, but it is connected to the nasal cavity. So it's called the nasopharynx. This is the opening into the nasopharynx. In other words, that's the part of the cavity that can connect to the nasal cavity above it. The oropharynx is more general. The oropharynx is the complete open cavity of the throat. So if the oropharynx is general, the nasopharynx is a bit more specific. So here is mucosa all around the oropharynx, all around the throat. Here is the opening to a specific part, the nasopharynx. And you should know about the glottises. The epiglottis, epi meaning around or over, the epiglottis is a flap, a flexible flap that covers the glottis, which is the vocal cords, the slit for the vocal cords. And we all know that pigs have a voice, so they have a glottis much like we do. We have an epiglottis obviously as well. You will learn about this more in the video and the function of the epiglottis, but I wanted you to start to get an understanding of the differences in the words there. The epiglottis is a flap that goes over the glottis, which are vocal cords that are in the larynx, which is the voice box, not the pharynx, which is the entire throat. The larynx is the voice box. And then you proceed down into the trachea with your air that breaks into the bronchi into the lungs. So be aware when you watch the videos of the differences in the pharynx words, the larynx words, and the glottis words. Now, in terms of the salivary glands, you will not see this on the video, but I think it's important, and I think it could definitely come up on a final exam. I haven't seen the final exam yet, but this is also an area that is really important to me because I actually had a parotid tumor and a facial nerve dissection, a radical facial nerve dissection, when I was not too much older than you are now. So this is something that I pay attention to. This is a diagram of the salivary glands in the fetal pig. You will not see this on the videos. You should know that there are 3 salivary gland types. The largest is the parotid gland. Then there is the submandibular gland and the sublingual gland. Lingual as in tongue, as in language. And so the sublingual gland is the one that is closest to the ventral side of the pig, and you should know about those 3 glands. The facial nerve goes right through the middle of the parotid gland. When you eat, that facial nerve is triggered to secrete saliva. So it's a very important facial gland. It also controls much of your lips and much of your cheeks. I know because mine was out of commission for 6 months. You may also hear about a masseter muscle that is overlying the oropharynx. So you can know about that. You will not see that on the video, but look at that beautiful facial nerve right there that's dissected out really well. And the masseter muscle that reacts to the facial nerve. The facial nerve just sits right on top of it and directs it to move. Really a beautiful system if you think about it, and your 3 glands there. I want you to know about that. When it comes to the digestive system, I want you to know a little bit more about the diaphragm. And in terms of that, I want you to get into some of the specifics of how the diaphragm works. Yes, of course, the function of the diaphragm is to separate the thoracic cavity from the abdominal cavity, but the diaphragm is much more than just a division. And the diaphragm acts in this way. When you inhale and your rib cage expands, your diaphragm, that muscle, actually contracts and moves down toward the abdominal cavity. As a result, the area for your lungs now has more volume. Not only are your ribs expanding, but your diaphragm sank, so there's more volume for your thoracic cavity. More volume with the same pressure means that that pressure reduces and becomes a negative pressure area that helps to draw air into the lungs. That's a very important point to think about, that negative pressure area for the diaphragm. I'm not sure how much you went into that in lecture, but think about it the other way. When you exhale, your ribs relax and your diaphragm also relaxes and moves up back into the thoracic cavity. Those two actions of the rib cage relaxing and the diaphragm relaxing and move up restrict the amount of volume in the thoracic cavity. So whatever is there is now under higher pressure. That higher pressure tends to push the air out of the lungs and cause the exhale. So these are just the very start of the physiology of the diaphragm, a very complex organ. And I will say to you that it's pretty much a given that you are going to be tested on the spiral colon for the fetal pig. The spiral colon for the fetal pig is the transverse colon in the human. They are analogous. So it is called a spiral colon in the pig. It is very much like the transverse colon. You might see it up here, but I wanted you to know it here as well so you can label it on an exam. When it comes to the diaphragm, here is where you're going to note it on the video. It'll be very well explained on the video. This brings us more into the respiratory area in the thoracic cavity. Let's take a look at that because you may not see that as well on the video. You should know that the trachea that is descending through the ventral plane of the fetal pig is coming down and splitting off into bronchi, which are tubes that go to each lung. Now, think about it. You are seeing a dissection here that has removed the heart. The heart would normally be in this left cavity. And so that heart is very important, and it means that there is only one bronchi on that left side, whereas on the right side, there are 2 bronchi, right? One right here that you don't have room for on the left side because the heart is there, and one that's farther down here. And then, in fact, this will be known as the apical bronchus, like apex, like top. Apical bronchus, then the right main bronchus, and this is going to be that left main bronchus. Just to know that as well. And in regards to the lung, there are physiological differences with the lung as well, because on the right side you have more room. You don't have a heart there that is beating and taking up a lot of your area on the left side. So the right lung in pigs has more lobes than the left lung, and in fact they're very well named. One is the apical lobe, which is at the apex of the thoracic cavity, the top of the thoracic cavity. The next one is going to be the cardiac lobe down here, which is right alongside the cardiac organ, the heart. Then you'll